feel even a little but I know they're recording, so I'm gonna sit up here. I was gonna sit down there with you guys. So I'm deeply humbled to just come share some words with y'all today. In the last 20 minutes since I've been just in this space, I've already been so humbled. Just hearing some words about the program, the legacy from which it was born, having an opportunity to just be able to meet some folks, see Cam, and see the smile on his face when I first walked in here. There's something really beautiful about just being in this space and being with you. And the fact that this opened up with that creed and that mantra, like that floored me. So I'm already emotionally engaged. So, I mean, I'll let you guys know a little bit about who I am and what I do. I don't want this to be like a speech. I want this to be a conversation. So if as I'm speaking, you want to interrupt me or you have a question about something or you, whatever else it is, like feel free to do that. Is that cool? So I'm right now, I am a professor, a full professor, and an endowed chair at the University of Southern California. And I am director of youth and community partnerships at the USC Race and Equity Center. Sound like a lot of jobs, right? And before I took that job, I took that job starting in January. I was a professor of science and education at Columbia University. And I was associate director of an Institute for Urban and Minority Education. And prior to that, I had a fellowship at Harvard at the Hutchins Center, where I was like a Caperson Fellow, which is a fellow who works in education. Then I also was a Hip Hop Archive Fellow. That was the fellowship that ended up turning into the Nasir Jones Fellowship, named after Nas at Harvard. And at that time also, where I was doing that work at Harvard for that fellowship, I was asked to be a STEAM ambassador, so that's Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math ambassador for the United States Department of Energy, and then also a STEM ambassador for the U.S. Department of State. So the U.S. Department of State under President Obama would send me to like Portugal and like Spain to go have conversations with people about education and its intersections with culture and all that. So the question is like, why am I saying all this, right? Like, because usually people value you based on those things, those jobs. If I were to describe myself, the thing I could describe myself the most by is my story. You know what I mean? Like, raised in Brooklyn in the Bronx, New York. Went through a lot of nights without knowing where the meals was coming from. I remember once we were living in a building that nobody was supposed to be living in. And so we couldn't heat it, so we had to turn the oven on to get the place warm enough for my brothers and sisters and I. I have a ton of siblings. Some are like direct siblings, like Adiola and Monique. Monique passed away from colon cancer a couple years back with my mom. But I also have my brothers, Jonathan and Josiah, who are twins. My youngest brother, who is Charles. My other sister, who's Jennifer, who's based in North Carolina. My other sister, who's Naomi, who lives in DC. Another sister who I think is in London. I'm saying all that to say, if people were to ask who you are, and they heard not the things I started with, but the things I'm ending with, they would say, how could that person be that person, right? Your stories are told from a vantage point of different people. And many folks won't ever see your true story. They'll only see who you are in front of them. And unbeknownst to you, and because of the way life happens, we've been told that we're supposed to hide the story of the things that are not the pretty parts and then celebrate all the tough parts or the titles or the whatever else it is. And I went through for so long in my life hiding all those things, right? I struggled to get my undergrad degree. Don't nobody know that story? They know, oh, he graduated with a degree in physical anthropology, biology, and chemistry, triple major, stunning on him. But they didn't know I had to work security from 8 to 9 and then 9 to 11 and then go to school and take my class. Like, nobody cares about the ugly parts. And when the pretty parts show up, they only want to hear about how that's what makes you special. The reality is, I couldn't have done all the things that I did if I didn't learn how to embrace all the parts that was the struggle. The beauty of your success is predicated on the extent to which you embrace your struggle. But the world tells you forget your struggle. Which is why this book is not just like a thing I wrote. Like it's a description of a way to help us to reclaim our genius. So Ratchetdemic is about recognizing that I don't have to choose. The world tells you that you're either ratchet or academic. My background is ratchet as, right? It's all the ugly things, all the struggling things, all the neighborhoods you're not supposed to come from, all the low loudness, all of the excessiveness. People used to ask me when I was in ninth grade, what do you want to do when you grow up? I was like, I want to spit bars. I want to be a rapper. Like my goals were not these goals. And the more I went in education, I had luck and opportunity and circumstances and prayers and things that got me to where I'm at. But the more I got, the more we're like, okay, hide the ratchet. You know what I mean? Don't tell folks that story. And I got to the point where I recognized that by hiding the ratchet, I could only go so far. And by hiding the ratchet, even as I went to a certain level, I was chasing something I was not. By chasing just the academic and forgetting the ratchet, you start realizing that the academic is what other folks have that's not you. And so even though I've struggled and got to where I'm at, I got where I'm at, but I'm still looking at them like they're the goal. I don't know if y'all feel where I'm going to. Like when you erase who you are and you get to a certain point, now you're battling folks who didn't have the struggle you had. Right? I know your stories. Right? They don't have those things. And you're chasing somebody who got somebody that handed them everything. Right? And now you're here like, oh my gosh, what can I do to be more like you? But the reality is we're both here. Are you alive right now? Are you in whatever grade you're in right now, whatever school you're in right now? You're sitting there in the same classroom as somebody who had everything handed to them. And yet you show up, green jacket on and all that, fly. So you're already on par with them. But here's the thing. They can never get what you have. That's the part. We've been convinced that we should be chasing them when in reality what we have is what they never have. I walk into rooms with PhDs and they got mad degrees and all those things. And I'm like, yeah, fam, I got what you got. What you trying to say? You know what I mean? I grinded hard and I got here. But you know what you ain't got? That Bronx sauce. Right? You ain't got no style. You ain't got no swag. You ain't got no energy. You ain't got no vibe. And people will tell you that those things are inconsequential. Somebody will convince you that your style is not academic when they ain't got no style. Think about that. I want y'all to understand what I'm saying to you, right? It's like, why are you so concerned about what you wear? You should just be caring about your degrees. Well, you worried, why am I concerned about what I wear? I'm looking at your outfit. I could tell you don't have any concern about what you wear. You can't turn up like I turn up. That's a strength I have. Y'all feel me? And here's the thing. You've got to choose for yourself that you'll be equal parts who you are and academic. See, the problem is when we embrace the ratchet and only the ratchet, right? There are folks who come from where we come from, experience what we, and they have things and they wear those things as badges of honor in pursuit of things that are non-academic, right? And I don't blame them for holding on to those badges of honor because those are stripes and things that they've earned. But to earn those things in a world that was created to construct a narrative about you and your brokenness and reinforce biases about you is a waste of time. I could use the background I come from and the fact that the folks around me kept it real and all that to make decisions that would lead me to the criminal justice system and in jail. And yeah, it's a badge of honor, but what does that earn me other than my brokenness? What does that earn me other than ammunition for those who only saw me that way anyway, to justify why they viewed me that way? So to be ratchetdemic is a radical new approach. It's to say, I will be equally as ratchet as I am academic. The extent to which I turn up with my people is the extent to which I am going to do whatever it takes by any means necessary to get these degrees. When I got a degree in anthropobiochemistry, they were like, you can't triple major. Nobody ever triple majored. That's crazy. And I said, why can't I? And they're like, because nobody does it. And I'm like, word? Did you ever have to heat your apartment up with an oven? We did it though. I want y'all to understand this. I did it though. So the things that I've survived were challenging and yet I made it. So being academic is like, what's this? Studying? Yo, can we be real with each other? Studying is light. Compared to life, what is it? You read something once, you don't quite get it. Nobody gets it on the first try. You read it twice. You read it 3 times. You're like, you know what? I'm gonna write a song about it. That's what I do. When I was in my graduate school course and everybody was going crazy, oh my gosh, we don't know how to engage in the mesenchymal stem cells. I'm like, chill. I'm gonna write some bars about that. because I grew up wanting to be a rapper. So I wrote rhymes about it. Like, you're writing raps about advanced science? It makes no sense. Okay, don't make no sense for you. It makes sense. They in a test sweating. I'm in here like. Because our magic is our magic, and they can't steal our magic. And here's the other piece of this that I want y'all to understand. Not only can you be ratchetdemic, and I also want to be honest, when you're ratchetdemic, also, you're going to make folks uncomfortable. Let's just be clear. Like, I don't want to make it seem like you're going to be ratchetdemic and they'll be like, oh, great, you're awesome and ratchet. Like, no, your ratchetdemic identity is going to make folks uncomfortable. You have to understand that their discomfort is actually ammunition for your more fervent pursuit of your excellence. Like, whenever I get into spaces and people are uncomfortable, like, oh, doctor, he's so loud, he's so abrasive. I'm like, ooh, you uncomfortable because I'm swagging on you. It's just going to make me go heavier. Y'all understand? And you have to understand that a system that was designed to break you, when they see you unbroken, does not know what to do with itself. That's why they react. Pull the funding. Take away the grant. That's not the way it should. They will come up with things. When they're responding that way, it's only evidence that you're on the right path. Why? Because your academic credentials are intact, and that they can never take away from you. Now, the other part about this that I want y'all to understand is that you have to be very deliberate as a ratchetdemic on what you cast your dreams on. Folks don't like to talk about dreams, right? They don't like to talk about spirit. They don't like to talk about emotion. For a couple of reasons. I think that we live in a society where they have this concept of the separation of church and state and all these things, and spirituality is not a significant piece of what it requires for you to be able to be successful academically. Okay, if that's what you believe. But guess what? People did not make it through the transatlantic slave trade with metal cuffs on their wrists and knees, hundreds on top of each other, not knowing where they would go, where they'd end up, not knowing what tomorrow looks like unless there was faith. Now, I ain't telling you what to believe in, but you gotta believe in something. You gotta have a fervent belief that there's something beyond just the academic and the intellectual that exists that guides you. And what you cast your belief in is what will sustain you through the moments where you're trying to construct your academic self. Reconstruction, slavery, Jim Crow. People don't make it through that just because, beloved. And folks are trying to extract that belief in a larger future as though it's not an academic exercise. Well, it might not be an academic exercise, but it's a personal one. And that personal one gets you through. So cast your mind on things that are great and lofty. And then also the important thing is to know that what you cast your mind and dreams upon is going to happen. Look at me. What you think about and dream about the most happens. What you close your eyes at night and imagine for yourself happens. So you've got to be very intentional about what you allow in your space, in your circle, in your mind, what you consume. What you consume is not just food, it's the folks around you. One of my favorite philosophers and abstract thinkers, Nipsey Hussle, said if the people in your circle don't inspire you, you don't have a circle, you have a cage. Who you kicking it with? And I'm not the old dude gonna be like, yo, don't hang out with your friends. Like, because I heard that speech when I was a kid and I hated it. Like, don't tell me what to do. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and matter of fact, when they told me don't kick it with them, I'm like, that's why I want to go kick it with them, because you don't like them. Like, but I also have learned that what you surround yourself with, what you consume, and what you consume is energy. As a scientist, right? Like, you know, you eat food to be changed into energy that sustains your life form biologically, right? People who are around you, the words they say and what they pour into you becomes energy that you consume that guides your mind form. The life form and mind form are the same concepts. I don't want to get too biological for y'all, but one of the most powerful aspects of biology that I love the most is this concept of biomimicry and mirror neurons. It's so wild, right? Also epigenetics. Can I get a little geeky and scientific with y'all for a little bit? So check this out. Yo, the thing about biomimicry is scientists have discovered that the extent to which they can come up with ideas about how to change the world are limited in their own minds, because the mind does not have the capacity. So when they want to create something that's really inventive, they actually go and study nature. And from observing nature, things that happen on their own, and not just like buildings and stuff, like they go out in the woods and study what's going on. Like, what does nature do? They actually use the ideas from nature to create scientific enterprise. So for example, y'all ever heard of Velcro? That be on your sneakers or whatever? Velcro was constructed because they couldn't find ways to make these two like objects stick together. So they went out in the woods, and you ever go in the woods and them little burrs be sticking on you? They literally constructed Velcro, a scientific phenomenon based on observation of what happens naturally. You ever heard of the Wood Wide Web? Which is like analogous to the World Wide Web, which is computing. But the Wood Wide Web is actually like a biological construct where in the woods, the trees are all connected, their roots underground, and all the roots of the trees are communicating with each other based on the information from outside. So if somebody cuts down a tree, the trees literally are talking to each other through their roots to say, oh, you grow farther, or you go over here and get more nutrients. So the concept of the World Wide Web is actually a metaphor from the Wood Wide Web. Nature dictates technology. And what nature has told us is the environment in which an organism develops dictates the extent to which that organism has a life form that can sustain a lifespan. Bottom line, science is telling you don't kick it with suckers. I don't let nobody in my circle, if they do not edify, and complex ideas can multiply based on a relationship with each other. I have people who I love, and it don't mean you don't love them. I love them, like love them. Like, oh man, I miss kicking it with you so much. You used to make me laugh. But all the words you say are confirming negative things over my life and yours. And my mission and vision is bigger than the circumstances that you profess. So I gotta let you go. Because there's things I have cast my mind and dreams and goals upon that will make people shudder, but I can't get there kicking it with you. Y'all hear me? What you consume dictates where you go. That also goes to what you consume on here. Stop me if I'm being a little too preachy. I just want to tell you, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to keep it a buck with you. If you watching death on a consistent basis, nothing can grow from your mind. Which is why when people be sharing like, this person got shot and killed, this person got shot and killed, this person got beat up, this person got and all we're consuming on a consistent basis on social media are images of people who are going through death and loss and brokenness. How can anything powerful and beautiful, edifying grow from your mind? So I curate are y'all getting me? Fam, I curate my circle. I only have one prayer that's consistent. I pray for a lot of things. The most consistent prayer I pray for in my life personally is for discernment, nothing else. You know what discernment is? Discernment is the ability to be able to see what is for you and not for you, who is for you and not for you. So I enter into a space, I can tell in 5 minutes if we're going to be homies or not. Because my discernment on tilt. You know what I mean? And so work on discernment and curate people around you in your circle that's going to edify you as you construct your academic identity. And then back on the thing about your mind and your dreams and what happens, I'm going to tell y'all a story. Can I tell a little story? This one ain't even in the book. The book is lit, by the way, but it's not even in the book. So when I was a kid, I told you I wanted to be a rapper, right? But I didn't just want to be a rapper. I wanted to be a rapper in a specific group, Wu-Tang. I know y'all are younger and y'all might have different people, you know what I mean? Like, y'all like ASAP Mob or like, you know what I mean? Like, the NBA young boys and them, like, you know. But for me, it was Wu-Tang. Like, that was it. You know what I mean? Like, RZA, GZA, Old Dirty Bastard, Inspector Deck. Like, what? So at 13, what you want to do when you grow up? I want to be in Wu-Tang. I'm be a rapper. Okay, you don't know if you're going to make it as a rapper. I was like, not just a rapper, I'm being Wu-Tang. And they be like, nah, boy, you tripping. And as life went on, I would rap, whatever. It didn't end up being a career source for me. I struggled in high school. I didn't officially graduate high school. I got into a fight my senior year. My parents sent me away. By the time I came back, all my friends had graduated. I went to a local school. Like, but you was at Harvard and Columbia, and you at USC. Yup. So, you know what I mean? I went to Lehman College in the Bronx, which is the closest one to my crib. It was the only one I could get into because nobody else would let me in late. But the interesting thing is, as I got there, I started finding my academic self. I was like, oh, I'm not dumb. Oh my gosh, I'm not, and things started happening for me. Time goes by, things evolve. I become a scientist, I become a teacher, and then when I was teaching, I became a teacher, I ended up rapping science with my students. Like it's the way I could get my students to connect. And so time fast forward, one day I'm giving a graduation speech at Columbia. I'm a speaker, and the other speaker is Neil deGrasse Tyson. I don't know if y'all know who Neil deGrasse Tyson is. He's like that's like my guy. He's my guy. Like there's a meme about him where he's just going like this. Like he's the dopest, smartest man. So what happened was we were both on stage, and graduations are usually boring, except for the people who are graduating. And so he and I are the speakers, and he's falling asleep. Like he's nodding off. And I'm like, bro, you can't fall asleep. Like, you know what I mean? Like, for a couple of reasons. But I was like, we're the only two black men on the stage. You can't be asleep. You know, so it's like, I'm like elbowing him. And then we started talking. And as we started talking, he's like, yeah, so what are you into? I'm like, hip hop, science, education. He's like, science and hip hop, huh? This guy's been calling on my lab. I said, who? It's like, he's a rapper guy. You might know him. I'm like, if he's a rapper, I probably know him. He was like, his name is Gizzard. Gizzard. I was like, I know a lot of rappers. I don't know nobody named Gizzard. And he was like, yeah, he comes from a group. The group is like, it sounds like Takeout, like Wu. I was like, wait, Jizza? From Wu-Tang? He's like, oh yeah, that guy. Because Neil is not really a hip hop guy. He's cool, but he ain't a hip hop guy per se, although he's been embracing a lot more hip hop recently. And I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, is he legitimate? I'm like, fam, he's very legitimate. And I was like, invite him to the lab, and then invite me to the lab. And I'll come, and I can introduce you guys to each other, and y'all could talk about science and hip hop, and I'll be like the hip hop science interpreter. So he invites Jizza to the lab. He lets me know. We go to the Hayden Planetarium at the American Museum of Natural History. I'm usually like right on time for stuff. I'm like, if you want me here at 4, I'll be there at 4. It was at 10 o'clock. I was there at 8 a.m. like this, like Jizza about to be here. Wu-Tang is for the children. So I'm there early. Jizza walks in. Neil walks in. We're in this meeting. We're talking. And I thought I was going to be interpreting between hip hop and science, except Jizza, unbeknownst to me, loves science. He's talking about black holes and dark matter. I'm like, Jizza, this was never on any Wu-Tang albums. Like, y'all had a song called Wu-Tang Clan. Wait, like, where was all this? Because he had hid his ratchet. It's levels. He had hid his academic to be valued in the hip hop scene. And he was trying to find himself back with Neil deGrasse Tyson. And he was calling scientists, they wouldn't even believe that he was really a rapper who was interested in science. Anyway, we start talking. I'm like, yo, I rap with my kids in schools and stuff. Maybe we should, would you come to a school and kick it with me? We could do a competition, have the kids write about science bars, you know, Wu-Tang would represent. And he was like, sure. I was like, oh, okay. So we created this program, you could Google it, called Science Genius. Literally, me and Jizza went to schools across New York City, challenging young people to write raps about science content. And it took off. And I remember one day, Stanford University asked me and Jizza to give a talk, to give a speech together. And so we get ready for the speech. And like right beforehand, we're sitting there talking. And I'm like, yeah, man, you ready for the talk? He's like, yeah. And he was like, yo, Chris, you know what? You're like the education member of Wu-Tang. Son, my whole life was like, what just happened? But here's the point. Here's the point. I went and found my academic self. But when I was 13, I cast my dreams upon being a member of Wu-Tang. My mind said it was through rapping. My intelligence said it was through being an academic. But because I cast my mind upon it, my heart upon it, and my dreams upon it, it manifested itself. Don't let nobody tell you that what you don't dream can happen. Just make sure you cast your dreams on the thing that have meaning to you. You heard? That's that part. The next part is about epigenetics. Because I know you and I know your stories in many ways. I don't know the details, but I know a lot about it. And epigenetics is a concept in biology that says that some of the things that happen in our environment that we don't think can be passed down can end up being a piece of who we are genetically. It's a crazy concept. So for example, tell you a science story. Can I tell you a science story too? Is this okay? Me telling you these stories? Is it cool? You sure? So check this out. Biologists will oftentimes study mice to get an exemplar of human behavior and human responses to phenomena, right? So these scientists had these mice, and they had these mice in a cage. And that's where they usually put the mice in the cage. And then they introduced a smell to the mice that the mice would love. It was the smell of cherry blossoms. Smells good. And the mice naturally had an affinity for the smell of cherry blossoms. They were like, cherry blossoms, I love this. And they were dancing around happily, trying to get to the cherry blossoms by any means necessary, even though they were in the cage. Y'all with me? And as the biologists noticed that the mice liked cherry blossoms, they said, let's try an experiment. Let's introduce the smell of the cherry blossoms at the same time as electric shock. So they would shock the mice and introduce them to the cherry blossoms at the same time. And before long, what do you think happens to the mice? The mice started associating the smell that they loved with the shock. Condition. See? Now they had the third step. They took away the shock and they reintroduced the cherry blossoms by itself without any shock. And they would still talk. Because they'd been conditioned to believe that the smell was only associated with electric shock. Take it a step further. The mice who had experienced that stimuli, they mated them with other mice, like that never went through any of that. They had offspring. Their offspring, who had never been introduced to the smell or the shock, when introduced to the smell, were jumping like they were being shocked, even though they never experienced it. Literally, in the world of biology, they lost their minds. They're like, how is this possible? We didn't know that you could pass this down. They had 3 generations later. Not only were they introducing the smell and they would get shocked, but they also looked at the physiology. That means the characteristics of the mice. They noticed that the mice 3 generations later had developed more sensitive olfactory nerves. The olfactory nerves, the nerves in your nose that help you to smell. Their olfactory nerves were more sensitive to smell. Like they were looking for the smell and still being shocked. There were parts of their brain that were rewired to be sensitive to the shock. Why am I sharing this with you? We've been through some things as a people, but also individually, right? By function of being in this program, right? You've gone through a metaphorical shock. And if social life carries on its own, you will start responding to the cherry blossoms in your life like you're being shocked. You know? Folks will give you love. And you're like, oh my God, I can't receive love.
You're talking about PTSD passed down through genetics.
Bruh, not just post-traumatic stress disorder. Like we talk about a poor teaching in schools disorder, which is a PTSD. Somebody in school told you were not smart enough or good enough, and you started having trauma around learning. Because somebody told me that I could never be a scientist when I was in the 5th grade, the 7th grade, and 8th grade. And so anytime I went to a science or math class, I was like, I don't want this. I'm not good at it. There are adults right now. They're like, I'm not a math person. I'm not your fam. We just asked you to add. Like, it's not that deep. Like, they literally like, it's not for me. I can't do it. Because they've been traumatized in their past. And you know, the only way that the scientists could interrupt the cycle of the trauma and that PTSD was not through the cherry blossom and it was not through the shock. It was about taking away the cage. There are cages that we're all in. Cages of your past, cages of your experiences, cages of narratives folks talked about you about. And because you're locked in that cage, you will still respond to cherry blossoms like you're being shocked. You've got to take away the cage. It's painful, but you're not defined by your past experiences. You carry them with you as a badge of honor. They are the ratchet that'll help you be the better academic. When you're fully ratchetemic, you can tell that story and you're not shocked by the cherry blossoms anymore. But you can tell a story of the fact that you survived it. And then you merge it with the academic. See, without the academic, it's useless. This is what I want to tell y'all. You know, when y'all said that mantra's creed, this is what I was telling my brother earlier. Like, listen, at the end of the day, everybody in here go get a doctorate. God damn, then how? Go get it.
Without education, man is a slave.
Slave to whatever. And the question is what you're a slave to. You're a slave to what folks construct about you. You become a slave to your past. A slave to narratives that have nothing to do with you. I was just born into it. How you gonna define me by the context I was embedded in? But the education is the ratchet that unlocks. You know, when I talk about in the book Ratchetemic, I write about ratchet in 3 ways. So one, you know, it's the ratchet, like the hood ratchet. You know what I mean? Like, right? That's a valuable ratchet. Then if you talk about mechanically or in engineering, you know, the ratchet is a tool. It's a socket wrench, a ratcheting device that you use to unlock or loosen something. And then I'm an East Coast cat, you know, so in the 90s when I was coming, you know, I'm a little old now, but when if somebody came in a place and they were like, yo, you better chill, he got the ratchet on him. I don't know if y'all know what that means. Huh? You know, you might want to leave him alone. You heard? So when I talk about ratchet, it's a triple entendre, right? Your ratchets are your loudness, your fearlessness. Ratchet folks ain't scared. You ever notice that? Like, I am who I am. Y'all ain't gonna tell me what to do in here. Like, they're not scared. But that absence of fear is a gift.
So it's your fighting spirit, that's what I was trying to say.
Man, we battle not. Y'all don't want me to get to preaching today because I will if you make me. Right? But we battle not against flesh and blood, but principalities, powers, and rulers of darkness. And when people say that, people get too ideological and religious about it, and faith is important. But what it's saying is that you're battling not just what you see, but the stories about you, the context about you, the environment around you, the definitions about you, all those things are what you're really battling. If you're operating thinking about just what you see, you miss all the stuff that's playing the cage. So you got to be fearless. I'm moving the world with no fear. Why? Ancestors and God got me. You got to believe that. Time? Oh, y'all, I'm going to stop. So, yeah. So just your ratchetness is your loudness, but your ratchetness is a thing that can unlock. A ratchet loosens, tightens, and makes life easier, right? And then the ratchet is a secret weapon that those folks don't have, but you have. When you unleash it, you air out the whole academic system, all right? So I'm done, and I'm going to take some time for questions. Yeah.